Hi, my name is Arash. In this video, I want to talk about executing of rules and logic. When you're building your software and you externalize all your rules and logic from your application source code, then those rules and logic are sitting outside of your application just like any other external resources, such as picture or text file, a configuration file. You can update them independent of your application source code. So you can simply treat those rules and logic as an external resource, which in previous video I showed you how to load them into your application. But there is a big difference between externalized rules and logic and the other static resources of your application. Rules and logic are executable. They have dynamic behaviors, and by updating them, you can change your application behavior without changing your application source code. After loading rules and logic models into your application, then the next step for execution is creating an execution plan for those models. Creating an execution plan is very simple and you'll see it in a minute. It's a matter of writing a line of code. Once created, you should keep the execution plan reference for the rest of your application lifecycle, and you do not need to recreate them again if the model's unchanged. For the rest of your application, you just use created execution plan to create engines for executing your rules and logic. Once engine is created, you call a method of the engine and you pass your input values if required. Then engine creates an execution context, executes rules and logic using the execution plan. During execution, engine may raise events and your application is able to handle those events and respond to them. When execution is completed, you can collect values from execution context. You can reuse the execution plan for creating more engines and execution of rules and logics for new requests. Let's see how does it look like in code. I use the sample application we've used in the previous video for loading models. In this sample, we are going to execute a procedural rule. Then for execution, you need to reference FlexRule procedure assembly. I am going to execute rule to XML. Before execution, it requires a small change. Because the rule is writing an output to the console application, the console identifier in call method command is not defined. So we need to map that part of expression to system.console class. Now we create an execution plan for the procedural model by using procedure class and passing the model to that type. Now we need to instantiate a procedure engine using the execution plan. And then we simply call run method of the engine. For other engines like validation or decision, you may need to run validate method instead of run. To summarize, in this video you learned how to execute rules and logic. The first step is loading the models. Then you create an execution plan and keep the reference for reuse in future. And finally, you create an engine and call run or validate method of the engine and you pass input values if required.